All right, good evening, everyone. It is currently 6:01. We're going to start tonight's meeting. Let's please take roll.
Commissioner Lede,
Present.
Commissioner Calandra, Commissioner Diaz, Commissioner Kreiner, Commissioner Shergill, Vice Chair Bray, Chair Vang.
Here, thank you. We're going to start tonight's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, may you please stand. Ready? Begin. For everyone's convenience, I'll go ahead and read the procedures for tonight's meeting. This meeting is being conducted in person and electronically. For each matter considered by the Commission, there will first be a staff presentation, followed by a presentation from the project applicant. Testimony from supporters of the project will then be taken, followed by testimony from those in opposition. The applicant will have the right to a final rebuttal presentation prior to closing the public hearing. In accordance with Section 13 of Article 2 of the Planning Commission Rules and Regulations governing length of public debate, all public testimony from those in support and opposition of the project will be limited to 3 minutes per person. The 3 lights on the podium next to the microphone will indicate the amount of time remaining for the speaker. The green light will be turned on when the speaker begins. The yellow light will come on with the soft bell ring when 1 minute is remaining. The speaker should be completing the testimony by the time the red light comes on, with the final bell indicating time has expired. All in-person public testimony must be presented to the Commission at the podium. Any testimony that references race, religion, ethnicity, economic status, national origin, or any other classification protected under state or federal law in a derogatory manner should be deemed irrelevant and will not be considered by the Commission in making its land use determinations. If you challenge these land use matters in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised in oral or written testimony or before the close of the hearing. We'll start with the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Let's, before you, may we please have, in the audience, maybe please have it quiet just so we can respect the individual speaking. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Vang, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Israel Trejo with the Planning and Development Department. There are no changes to the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Do we have any comments or motion from the Commission? I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we'll have a second by Commissioner Lede. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Agenda is approved. Under the consent calendar, we have regular meeting minutes for the meeting on September 17, 2025. Do we have any members of the public who would like to comment on the consent calendar? I see none. Any comments or motion from the Commission?
Motion to approve. Second.
All right, we have a motion made by Commissioner Calandra. We have a second by Commissioner Lede. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Consent calendar is approved. Do we have any reports from the commissioners? Go ahead, sir.
All right, good evening, everyone. I got a couple of just thank you. City of Fresno's roadways are looking nicer, with the $100 million project. Thank you to Mayor Dyer and City of Fresno for repaving our roadways. It's making it safer. I also want to recognize our diverse community in the City of Fresno. This month, in State of California is celebrating Sikh Awareness and Appreciation Month for the contributions of the Sikh community. So we want to thank everyone, and we just want to appreciate the diversity of our beautiful city of Fresno. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any other reports from the commission? All right, we're going to go ahead and we don't have any continued matters. We have new matters. Please note that the new matter ID 251497, consideration development permit application number P2501440. That will be continued to November 19th. So we'll move on to the next item ID 251506, public hearing to consider the adoption of Tower District Specific Plan.
you, and then we can put some extras over here. Good evening, Planning Commission, Chair Vang. I'm Sophia Pagalatis with the Planning and Development Department, and this evening I have the pleasure of presenting to you the Tower District Specific Plan Update program, which includes several pieces. Our presentation tonight will cover background, outreach and engagement, an overview of the plan and the design standards and guidelines, the environmental impact report, and public comment. And then we will conclude with findings and staff recommendations. Let's see. Give us a minute. Looks like maybe we're not synced up. Uh-oh. There's me. Hello. Hi, Mom. I'm on TV. All righty. Thank you. Can we go back? Let's see. Back one. There we are. So, the Tower District Specific Plan presented tonight is an update of the 1991 Tower District Specific Plan. The new plan carries forward topics from the original plan that are still important today, such as neighborhood conservation and historic preservation, while adding focus on new issues such as transportation, recreation, and housing. In addition, the companion Tower District Design Guidelines, which were adopted in 2005 to help conserve neighborhood character, were also updated and renamed the Tower District Design Standards and Guidelines. These now include objective standards pursuant to state law. You can see by the covers of all four of these documents the importance that the Tower Theater plays as an iconic symbol of the neighborhood. The Tower District is indeed a special place, distinguished by its vibrant and diverse community, artistic flair, cultural activity, and neighborhood character. Constructed prior to World War II, it has a walkable street grid, mature trees, an identifiable main street, and very special architecture. The Tower District Specific Plan area is approximately 1,800 acres in area with a diverse population of about 20,000 people. It is distinguished by a rich mosaic of ethnic groups and includes longtime residents, young professionals, artists, and families, all contributing to the unique cultural flair. Over 50% of the community identifies as Hispanic or Latino. Age-wise, 21% of its members are over 60, and an equal percentage are under 18, which is more youthful than the city as a whole. This blend of people from different backgrounds and life stages fosters a strong sense of community. So now we'll jump into the process and outreach and engagement. Outreach was conducted throughout the 3.5-year planning process and took different forms depending on the planning phase. The goal of the first phase was to gather community input about existing conditions and needed improvements. During the first phase, several pop-up tabling events occurred at farmers markets and Porch Fest, for example. An online survey was conducted, the first workshop was hosted, and the implementation committee meetings began. During phase 2, a second workshop was held at Fresno City College. Tabling and special events continued, and small topic groups met to work on plan policies. In the final phase, which was in 2024 and 2025, the first public draft and land use plan was presented to the City Council last fall for initiation, and the EIR commenced. A second public draft of the specific plan and EIR and the first draft of the EIR were circulated in August and September of 2025, and that brings us to today. There we go. These were the tools that we used to reach Tower District residents. Highlights included a new project website with special tower branding, flyers posted in local businesses, a frequent presence at neighborhood events, and open monthly implementation committee meetings. Tower engagement was high. A total of 330 people attended the 2 community workshops, and the survey garnered 682 responses. Special events were also designed to reach populations that may have otherwise not participated. One of these was Tower Rocks, which involved painting on rocks to create a scavenger hunt around the tower community. Participants were encouraged to find the rocks, scan the QR code located on the rock, participate in the survey, post a photo with the rock, and include the hashtag Tower Rocks and place it in a new location. This unique public outreach effort was recognized by California's Professional Planning Association with an award of excellence. Here are some photos from the community workshops and tabling events. Pictured here are also members of the consultant team, which I wanted to take a moment to recognize. It was WRT, Wallace, Roberts, and Todd, and subconsultant Dan Zach is also pictured here, who helped WRT and Dan Zach helped guide the planning process and design guidelines and update the specific plan. Fun fact, WRT was also the firm that did the original 1991 Tower District specific plan. So what did we hear throughout all of this outreach? We heard that compared to the 1991 plan, the community indicated wanting more preservation tools that were accessible to homeowners and balancing preservation with a desire for affordable housing. With regard to land use, people continued to love the Tower District's character, but this was balanced by recognition of some of the Tower District's shortcomings. In particular, these were around lack of access to healthy food and everyday shopping needs, need for more affordable housing, and issues with entertainment uses. With regard to parks and public facilities, there was broad recognition that Tower does not meet the citywide park standards, and there were many ideas for how to utilize the land that is available for parks. Ideas ranged from providing more recreational opportunities at the existing parks in the areas, for example, Ted C. Wills, and also developing some of the smaller sites in the area, smaller pocket parks. With regard to circulation, Tower is much more walkable than most Fresno neighborhoods, and this is an important part of its appeal, but there were significant concerns we heard around pedestrian safety and comfort, tensions between bike lanes and parking, and not enough transit service. We also heard quite a bit about speeding through the neighborhood. The community input informed 7 collaboratively developed guiding principles, and these are here for you on the screen. They are about enhancing the livability and social diversity of the district and continuing to make sure it is inclusive and welcoming, nurturing the mutually supportive relationship between residential neighborhoods and vibrant commercial areas, conserving and revitalizing the Tower District's historic resources, shaping the character of new development to complement the Tower District's character as a walkable place, providing effective transportation access for pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, and transit users, increasing opportunities for recreation, and promoting environmental sustainability and climate resilience. So I'll give you a brief overview of the plan. And we're going to start with a cross-cutting priority of the Tower District specific plan was a focus on health and equity, acknowledging that our built environment affects health and equity in different ways. The 6 indicators you see on the screen were developed as a policy evaluation tool to help planning staff, consultants, and the public understand the implications of proposed policies. Each proposed plan policy was evaluated in light of these 6 indicators, and the results are included in Appendix B of the plan. Major conservation and historic preservation initiatives include continuing historic preservation efforts, including potential areas that were proposed in the 1991 specific plan, shown in light orange on the map, adding new potential study areas, shown in purple, and putting more emphasis on conserving assets in the public right-of-way, such as historic hitching posts and the pineapple lamps. Also, more emphasis on conserving elements important to community identity and the establishment of a historic museum. Updating the design guidelines is also called for in this section. Innovative policies include exploring ways to adaptively reuse or otherwise create affordable housing in historic structures. Finally, several policies include promoting the history and historic resources in the Tower District, and providing education to community members, real estate professionals, and others about the benefits and responsibilities of owning and managing historic properties. And on the map, you can see there not only the existing districts, the previously proposed districts, the newly proposed districts, and the dots that you see are actually designated historic resources. The Tower residents clearly expressed the desire for more park space. The challenge is the limited amount of available undeveloped land. However, the plan proposes creative ways to increase recreational opportunities. It includes, on the map, you'll see here, potential park opportunity areas for small parks, as shown, but ultimately park planning decisions are made by the Parks Department. And pictured here, you see the most recently constructed small creative park, Broadway Parquet, here at Broadway and Elizabeth. And on the map are identified several potential similar opportunities. The circulation chapter includes policies to improve the multimodal functions of key corridors, to enhance main streets, encourage active transportation, improve transit and pedestrian safety, and calm vehicular traffic. Placemaking and public realm improvement policies are also included to enhance the identity of the district. And you can see there in the photo in the center some success that the Tower District has already had with doing creative placemaking in the district. The plan also proposes land use changes, a very few, out of the 1,869 acres of the entire plan area. Land use changes are proposed on 138 acres, so a rather small percentage. On the left, you will see the general plan land use map for the Tower District, so that's what it looks like today. And on the right are the proposed changes, which I'm going to go over with you in a bit more detail. But essentially, what the land use changes seek to do are one of about 3 things. One, align the proposed land use with the existing uses that are on the ground right now. 2, redesignate areas that are underutilized for neighborhood mixed use. 3, increase housing opportunities along the major corridors by designating those corridors for mixed use. So we can look at this in a bit more detail, and we'll go to the next slide. So this shows it in a slightly different way. Again, on the left is the existing general plan land use, and on the right, now you're just seeing the proposed land use changes in the Tower District in isolation without the other uses around them. So if you can make out the numbers on the slide, number 1 is near the northwest corner of the district, near Shields and Fruit. There is a small redesignation there to medium-high residential to match the existing multifamily uses on the ground. Number 9 is a similar rezone. The neighborhood mixed use along Shields Avenue is a proposed designation to really add more opportunity for Shields, which is currently a mixture of housing and offices. So the neighborhood mixed use simply adds more opportunity to that corridor. And while we're on corridors, we'll go to Blackstone, which is number 10. Most of Blackstone along that corridor is currently planned and zoned for neighborhood mixed use, and this plan proposes to increase the intensity there to corridor center mixed use. And the proposed changes that you see in the center of the plan area, numbers 3, 4, and 5, those are 1 proposed and 2 designated historic districts that are currently constructed, and the proposed rezone going from medium density residential to medium low density residential is proposed. It was requested by the residents to actually match the way those neighborhoods are constructed. So that's why that is proposed. There's also an additional apartment house overlay. This map shows that overlay on the portion of West Olive that goes from the center out to the western boundary of the district, again along West Olive. That overlay would allow small apartment buildings with ground floor residential along this stretch, where currently now that area is planned commercial Main Street, and it would not necessarily allow the development of small apartment buildings. So this apartment house overlay, it simply adds another choice to the zoning. It does not take anything away. The other areas shown on the map, the darker blue crosshatch, show where that apartment house overlay already does exist in the tower, and the red boundary is for a proposed tower entertainment district, which is a follow-up item to this plan. So now we will take a minute to describe the new tower design guidelines, which are called the Design Standards and Guidelines. And I do want to point out that the Tower District is the only neighborhood in Fresno that has adopted design guidelines. So these are pretty special. They were originally called for in the 1991 plan, and it took a while to get those adopted. It was one of the first things I got to do when I came to work for the city of Fresno, was get those 2000 guidelines, 2005 guidelines over the finish line. So, let's see if I can get the slide to move. So why did we update these? Well, the 2004, adopted in 2005 guidelines are over 20 years old, and conditions change, construction practices and materials change. Many of the guidelines were incorporated into the new development code that was adopted in 2016. Specific plan policies need to be integrated into these design guidelines Development feasibility needs to be addressed to implement Fresno's housing element, and California law requires objective standards to expedite review of qualifying housing projects. So that was one of the main drivers for doing these, updating them. New features include updating terminology to match the development code, references to the development code where guidelines have already been codified, splitting each topic area into 2 subsections, standards and guidelines, and adding standards and guidelines to provide a clear and complete framework, especially in light of state streamlining laws. They don't look too different from the original guidelines. Here we have just a page from the initial guidelines. It's a parking area, and there you see the guidelines with some photos that we hope are helpful, this and not that. And in the new structure, heading names may change to match our development code, and each section is now divided into 2 sections, standards and guidelines. It's coming. Let's see. Thank you. And we included this slide just to emphasize that facade design and architecture is still very important in these guidelines. There is a new section on architecture, and additional architectural features are applied to the non-residential development types in the district. So now we're going to move into the environmental impact report, which was initiated actually at the beginning of the year. The notice of preparation issued in May, the scoping meeting in May. The draft EIR was circulated from August through September, and 13 comments were received. The impact areas analyzed were those that you see on the screen: air quality, biological resources, cultural and tribal resources, geology, soils, seismicity, greenhouse gas emissions, noise, and public services and recreation. I wanted to spend some time talking about the public comment that we received, and we're going to talk about not only the public comment we received on the EIR, but also the public comment we received on the Tower District specific plan and the design guidelines. So we'll start with EIR comments. We did receive just some clarifications from public agencies about how projects would be implemented in the Tower District, and also some requests for clarification from businesses on how the mitigation measures were to be applied. There were comments regarding impacts of industrial uses and comments related to aesthetics, air quality, and noise. Parkland was also brought up as a lack of parkland, and traffic and truck traffic. Those were the issues that were brought up, and we'll talk about how those were addressed in a moment, but for now I'm just going to highlight all the comments, then we'll talk about our response. So the next set of comments was about the plan, and we heard concerns about residential density changes, either increases or decreases. We heard about both. Concerns about parks, industrial compatibility, residential and entertainment compatibility, including noise, traffic, and trash, truck traffic, infill challenges related to electrical and solid waste services. And then finally, with regard to the design guidelines, we heard that about the photos and graphics. There was a request to have more photos and graphics supporting the document. Clarifications were requested regarding exterior cladding, especially stucco, window details, garages, and signage. And also, there was a question about industrial guidelines. So, staff and the environmental consultant analyzed all of the comments. With regard to the EIR, there were some changes made in the final EIR response to comments, which is included in your packet, that included some clarifications to mitigation measures and how air quality and noise, and the biological mitigation measures are to be applied. With regard to the plan and the design guidelines, in response to comments, staff is recommending the following changes, and these are all spelled out in Exhibit D to the staff report. So first, with regard to the Tower District specific plan, some suggested photo replacements, caption and map text corrections, addition of some potentially significant trees, the Belmont Phoenix palms and Deodar cedars as potential historic resources, 2 new policies to help remove barriers to infill development, changes to a land use indicator in health and equity section of Appendix B, and some land use change requests, which we'll go over in just a moment. For the Tower District Design Standards and Guidelines, staff is recommending photo additions and replacements and incorporating the clarifications that were offered on garages and carports, exterior cladding, window details, and signage. And again, these are all spelled out in Exhibit D. Now I am going to go through land use change requests. And all but the last one are also included in Exhibit D. And these are also described in the handout that was distributed. So the first one is a technical correction. It's number 1 on the map, if you can see it there. It involves 11 different parcels totaling almost 2 acres to remove parcels that were designated as commercial Main Street because they were acquired for public right-of-way and became part of the Belmont overcrossing. So that was just a technical correction on the map. Those parcels are no longer designated commercial Main Street, excuse me, I think I said mixed use, because they were acquired for public right-of-way. So we are, and on the information that you receive a description of the item with the acreage. We note the housing capacity impact. It's a loss of 94 units of capacity, and whether or not it can be accommodated within the EIR scope. In other words, would this cause some kind of additional significant impact? And it has been determined, and our environmental consultant is here with us this evening from LSA, that all of these that we're going to present to you tonight can be accommodated within the EIR scope. So this is the first one, number 1. We'll go to the second one. This was a council motion, actually at initiation, that we did not incorporate correctly on our initial zoning map. It applies to 1 parcel that is 0.58 of an acre, and the request is to, let's see, I'm looking at number 2. Yes, number 2. It should actually be from medium density residential to neighborhood mixed use. And I apologize because that's not what your handout says. It's medium density residential to neighborhood mixed use. And this was initially a request that was made by the South Tower Community Land Trust at the initiation hearings, and the council did move to include this particular land use on this parcel, and staff actually got it confused with the next one that I'm going to go over, which is number 3.
Can you repeat
Yes.
what it should be?
Yes, that parcel, number 2, indicated on the map above, should be going to neighborhood mixed use. It is currently planned medium-density residential. So you could cross out general commercial on your list and put medium-density residential, and I apologize for that. So again, that parcel should be going from medium-density residential to neighborhood mixed use for a half an acre. And there is a 30 dwelling unit gain in estimated housing capacity, and it can be accommodated within the EIR scope. And the third one is number 3 on the map. This is one that we designated for neighborhood mixed use, thinking it was the council motion. So again, this applies to one parcel. It's about the same size, half an acre. The specific plan designated it neighborhood mixed use, but staff is now proposing to allow it to revert to general commercial, so NMX to CG. That happens to be what it is planned right now, and that site is developed as a fairly new gas station. So essentially, this change is just undoing what the specific plan proposed for that site.
So it's consistency with existing land use.
Exactly.
Thank you.
It is consistent with the general plan. It does not have a housing capacity impact, and it can be accommodated within the EIR scope. And then the very last one, request number 4. Whoops, should I be forwarding my slides? I should. There's 3. Whoops, oh, sorry. 4 is not in your, in Exhibit D, and it just arrived this evening. And this one pertains to a parcel on McKinley and Palm, the northwest corner, requested by property owner Doug Cords. And the plan proposes neighborhood mixed use for this property. The owner would like it to remain as community commercial. So the zoning request would be to go from the proposed neighborhood mixed use back to community commercial, which is consistent with the current general plan. There would be a loss of 29 units of 29 units of capacity, and it can be accommodated within the EIR scope. So those are our land use change requests for this evening. And finally, we'll wrap up with findings and staff recommendations. So we do find that the proposed Tower District specific plan update is consistent with the Fresno general plan, and part of the applications, of course, will request that you amend the general plan so that the 2 land use maps are consistent. We found consistency with the development code, consistency with the housing element, and consistency with SB 330. The proposed land uses in the Tower District specific plan would add about 500 units of capacity to the existing land uses, and these changes do not reduce that significantly. So let's move to, this is a summary of the statement of overriding considerations. These are also findings that need to be made anytime with an EIR you are asked to override a significant and unavoidable impact. And in this case, the only significant and unavoidable impact in the EIR is the lack of park space, because the amount of park space does not meet city standards. And so in order to override that, you need to make findings that there are overriding considerations about why these projects should be adopted. And we note here that these are very similar to the guiding principles, that the project would enhance livability and social diversity within the Tower District by supporting mixed-use infill, reinvestment in aging infrastructure, and new housing opportunities. This would improve neighborhood vitality and help meet the city's housing goals while maintaining historic character. The project would encourage small business development, cultural programming, and entertainment uses that strengthen the Tower District's role as a local and regional destination. And I'm just summarizing here. The project would support walkability, bicycle and transit connectivity, and multimodal street design consistent with the Fresno General Plan and the Active Transportation Plan by promoting sustainable infill growth, energy efficiency, and reduced vehicle trips. The project would contribute to sustainability and climate adaptation goals citywide. And finally, the project is consistent with and would contribute to achieving the policies, goals, and objectives established by the Fresno General Plan. So that brings us to staff recommendations, and they are written in detail in your staff report, but I have just summarized them here, and they include recommending to the City Council approval of the certification of the EIR, recommending approval of the plan amendments to repeal the 1991 Tower District Specific Plan and the 2005 Tower District Specific Plan Design Guidelines, recommending approval of the plan amendments to adopt the Tower District Specific Plan and the design standards and guidelines, recommending approval of the corresponding amendment to the land use figure in the Fresno General Plan for 118 acres, recommending approval of the rezone for consistency with the plan amendments for 138 acres, including the apartment overlay zone, recommending approval of changes to the Tower District Specific Plan and Tower District Design Guidelines as detailed in Exhibit D. And I would add the land use change requests here, all of which are included in your packet except the last one, request number 4, if you decide to recommend those. And then finally, recommending to the City Council authorization of the Planning and Development Director to update the text, policies, maps, tables, and exhibits contained in the documents noted above to reflect the final action by the City Council. And that concludes my presentation for this evening. And I am happy to answer questions.
Awesome. Thank you. Do we have any questions from the commission? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much for the presentation. So how was the public input when you had meetings with the Tower District community? Were they happy about this plan, or when you have mingled with the community? How was their response?
Well, I think, when we have outreach events, we definitely want to hear it, hear how people feel. And I think what I noticed is as the planning process moved forward, there were fewer and fewer comments on the public drafts. And there was quite a lot of participation, over 30 implementation committee meetings, just many outreach and tabling events, and many opportunities to shape the policies in the plan.
We have any other questions? Go ahead.
I just have a question on one of the restrictions on windows. It's like horizontal sliding windows are not allowed. How did that be
Right, you're referring
determined?
to the design guidelines?
Yes.
That's just part of the historic character of the types of, the building types that are in the Tower District right now. So most of those have the vertical slider windows. And that is, the idea is in keeping with those, especially if those are in the house already or in the building already. The idea is to conserve those.
Okay. I mean, for an example, a home that has those crank windows that are very drafty, and somebody wanted to replace them. So they can put windows that slide this way? Or no?
They, vertical windows, if the home had the vertical windows, then it would need to replace those. If the crank windows that you're mentioning were part of the historic character of the building, then those may need to be kept as well.
I mean, I grew up in a house that had those crank windows, just outside of the Tower District. And if there wasn't that little jog, it would have been in there. And they were drafty, they didn't seal. And so if a homeowner went in and wanted to conserve energy because they're drafting, I mean, they would be either, I mean, what are their options? I mean, they have to put in the same type of window?
In many cases, they would, but the design review committee could work with them to come up with options, because we do know that energy conservation is important as well.
Yeah, because I mean, it just seems that it's somewhat restrictive.
Commissioner Leday.
So we personally have crank windows, and our house was built in 2012, so I know they update them so that they look the same, that are energy efficient as well.
The ones that I grew up with were not.
Oh, yeah, they've upgraded the windows since then so that they have the same aesthetic and appeal, but they just can be, energy efficient. It just depends on who they decide to use for their windows.
So you're still getting a good exercise then?
Oh, they're smooth. They glide, they open and close, no problems. So,
Do you have any other questions or comments from the commission? Thank you. Appreciate it. Yes. We're going to go ahead and go to the public. First, what we'll do is any individuals who would like to speak in support, please approach the podium. State your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Casey Austin Tibbetts, 1401 Fulton Avenue, Austin Consulting. I also am a business owner in the Tower District, and I am here tonight representing myself as a business owner and Producers Dairy. And I just want to say thank you to the planning staff for all of your engagement. We attended several of the community engagement. It was many times a lively discussion. It was always a community a group of people that really had their community at heart. And so I want to say thank you to the staff for that. And I want to also say that Producers is proud to be part of the Tower District. We are looking forward to working with our community as well as the city. So again, thank you. Producers employs about 300 employees that go to work to the Tower District every day, and many of them walk to work. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other individuals who would like to speak in support? State your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's Chris Johnson. I'm the chair of the Tower District Implementation Committee, and been working for the last 3 years on the plan. My address is 234 East Normal Avenue in Fresno. I've been a resident of the Tower District for about 35 years and had businesses and property owned there for quite some time. I sat on the Design Review Committee for forever, for quite a while, and did a lot of review as well. So got the opportunity to help update this plan, and we spent a long time. We took a pause actually for a little while because we didn't have the community engagement that we wanted initially. And you saw the public outreach plan that we came up with, and it's actually an award-winning plan now from that standpoint, from the outreach. We got much more increased engagement in the process as well. So just like to tell you we're here. We've done a tremendous amount of hard work. The staff, the residents, the businesses, everybody's participated, and we've had great turnout and a great process. I think this is the Tower District specific plan originally was I think the first specific plan for the city of Fresno, and we wanted to make sure we lived up to that standard and went to the next level as well for our district and the Tower area as well. So it's a preservation plan, so there is a lot of unique character in the Tower District. Some of those things you see, like the comment you were making about the windows, and being an architect, I can kind of address the reasoning behind some of that. The historic, there's definitely levels of historic preservation in the district. Some are, listed and registered. The other ones are participating in the character of the district. So the idea is to preserve and not have modern things take over historic buildings in a lot of ways. So the horizontal aluminum slider was one of the original things that was coming into the district a lot with all the apartment replacements that were coming in. You see those kind of scattered around with the plywood siding and a big carport in front of it. That's what was happening when the first plan got written. So we're addressing a lot of those different things in the plan itself. But I'd like to ask you guys to approve what we've kind of worked on here, and thank everybody for helping and participating over the 3 years. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other individuals who would like to speak in support? Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Sure. Janine Raymond, 660 East Carmen Avenue. I live in the Wilson Island Historic District. And first, I just want to thank Sophia and her staff for the wonderful job that you did engaging the community and specifically working with us. I wanted to comment on the importance of the guidelines, the standards and guidelines. Our homes are pretty much over 100 years old, so we predate slider windows. But those guidelines are extremely important when we're undergoing a generational shift in the neighborhood, and homeowners, particularly younger homeowners, new homeowners, really need to know what they're buying into when they buy an historic home, and the obligations that we have in accepting maintenance and care of an historic home in Fresno. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other individuals who would like to speak in support? Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes, sir.
Hey, good evening, Commissioners. Daniel Brannick, 657 East Hedges in the Tower District. I got to talk about the crank windows. I have casements. I can relate deeply to that. I also die a little bit inside. I see really bad vinyl windows, but I am glad that the alternatives exist. So just that little thing. I think, it's part of the culture of Tower. A lot of people, at least I've seen younger and older, respect all that and are trying to, think very pragmatically about a lot of things. And I hope that this plan does that. The original Tower District specific plan set a really high bar. It's a really solid forward-looking plan. Back to 1990 has some stuff that needs updates. I'm, speaking during support time, but with a couple of caveats. I'm probably going to submit some more formal written comments to council, but I just wanted to get them in tonight while I could during public comment. The first one has to do with policies and designs pertaining to circulation. There's Design Standard 48, which says there will be no widening or closure of roadways in the Tower District, but it only applies to residential single-family, residential multifamily, and mixed-use districts. It leaves out industrial, it leaves out public facilities, it leaves out everything open parks. It's kind of weird that it's a design standard, and there's a bit of a horizontal consistency issue with it included in the plan, so I'd want to call some attention to that. Speaking to the Plan Commission, I'm also speaking to city staff to potentially investigate that. There could be a workaround doing a policy, but if that's going to not apply in industrial areas, I'd be offended if it's going to be included for residential areas. The other one, more minor one, is policy C 4.2, which very specifically recommends slip lane closures on 180. I'd consider it, but it's pretty prescriptive in the plan as written right now itself, and I'd consider, at least looking at that, consider softening the language. Just want to note, I appreciate this is the second thing, different topic, language that was added to help better protect views of the Tower Theater spire, which is like part of just the overall urban setting and fabric of the tower. I might request a friendly amendment to say consider the height and design of buildings adjacent to that, so that way it covers things like lighting projections or signage as opposed to just raw height increase there. I might point to Sophia on that one. A couple of other things to talk about. The Central Valley Cheesevilling, I'll elaborate on this. This is producers' interest. I'm very glad that they were able to work with the community and stakeholders to move something forward there. It's currently still zoned industrial. If there is any possible way to get that radio development forward without it being industrial, I'd investigate it. There's multiple other radio stations in town, including La Buena and Q97's building, which is in tower, not zoned industrial, that has radio equipment. It doesn't seem like it's a prerequisite that it needs to be zoned industrial. So I've got some concerns about that. I'll elaborate in writing. The last thing I'll get in has to do with implementation. The implementation matrix is great, but I'd really like to see quantifiable performance metrics or performance standards. And I would also advocate consideration of a single unified implementation review and design review committee instead of the bifurcated design and implementation. And I think that's my time. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Any other individuals who would like to speak in support? All right. So what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and move to, are you going to speak in support or opposition? Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and move to those individuals who are in opposition. Feel free to approach your podium. Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Marco A. Zamora, and I'm the owner of 2 properties located on almost the corner of Belmont and Palm. It's about half an acre. 322 East Belmont and 340 East Belmont, APM 45903-101 and 459-2403. I just got this last minute because it got sent to the post office, so I picked this up at about 5. I was on the last Tower Committee meeting, and I pretty much opposed, I'm opposing today. And the reason I'm opposing is because 4 years ago, I was standing in front of you guys, and I went through a lot of work, like 2 years, to have my property, which I bought originally at C6 Commercial, the highest zoning at the time. And then it got changed to CMS, Commercial Main Street, which didn't permit a lot of the usages. So when I came to apply, that's when I found out that I could only be a wholesale dealer, not a retail dealer, even though I met the requirements of the zoning, you know. And when I bought it, I bought the property under the advice on another city employee. He told me, buy a C6 property, and then all of a sudden it gets downgraded and you can't do a bunch of stuff. Just so the city and the Tower Committee can be pleased by meeting the low-income housing requirements so they can meet their 800 acres quota, because they had a Class A lawsuit and they didn't have enough low-income housing, and of course they're not going to get the funds and stuff. And I understand. I'm all for beautifying the city, but it's been 10 years. They haven't done anything on Belmont. Belmont is never included as part of the Tower Committee. It's only going to benefit them so that on paper it looks like they got low-income housing, which is never going to get developed, or it's not going to get developed in 20, 30 years. But yet, me as an owner, I'm going to be affected if I sell it or if I partner with somebody, because I am talking to some nationwide auto-related businesses, and the zoning that I have right now, which is CG Commercial, which got changed by Oliver Bain back in, I think, 2021, 2022. That's how I was able to do the car dealership. So I ask you to please keep it commercial in general. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Kyle Lopez-Schmidt. I'm the Executive Director of the South Tower Community Land Trust. I live at 115 North Calavera Street. Speaking here today with 20 years of experience working in architecture and community development with many projects focused in the Tower District. I grew up on Dudley, just off of Fulton, and spent most of my life in the neighborhood, and led advocacy to have Broadway Parque established, a former police station converted into a 2/3 acre neighborhood park. And from that organizing, developed the South Tower Community Land Trust to continue to do other community development and affordable housing development in the neighborhood. And we're having great success. We now own 3 properties. We're in escrow to buy a 4th. We've got 2 existing homes we're renovating for affordable home ownership, and another 9 units of housing that we have in pre-development, and more to go from there. And we're in escrow to buy a commercial building to be our office, and the office is for 3 other nonprofits. This plan, in many ways, along this process, I've given a lot of comments, and I submitted an 8-page letter of detailed comments around being more bold and giving us tools to really reverse a lot of the disparities in our neighborhood. The Tower District was developed and the north part of it being white exclusive neighborhoods, and created kind of some segregation that today the areas that you see being downzoned in residential density were white exclusive home neighborhoods. And when you map that over with environmental health impacts of today, it directly overlines where those are the healthier neighborhoods, and South Tower and other parts of the neighborhood are impacted by more traffic safety issues, more renters, more substandard housing, housing insecurity, lack of healthy food access, higher pollution burden. All of those things are legacies of that, and we have to keep that in mind as we make some of these decisions on how we zone property. So don't support the downzoning of those homes at Wilson Island and other zones that used to be white exclusive neighborhoods. We need to be a lot more bold in identifying more park space. We have a need for 64 acres of park space, and this plan doesn't identify more than, I think, about 3 acres of parks. And we really need to be bold on how we identify that to get parks more consistent. We appreciate the staff identifying the 604 North San Pablo property as a property that we own, that we've requested to be upzoned to mixed-use neighborhood to allow us to build more housing for the neighborhood. This is right adjacent to San Pablo Park, as well as Ted C. Wills, a really great location for more housing density. I ask that you not certify this EIR today. There's significant challenges in how the environmental studies were done. If you look at the sound study, for example, there's 3 locations for the sound study. The one neighborhood left out of that corner is the corner with all the industrial and transportation infrastructure. More detailed notes in my letter. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, do we have the next individual who'd like to speak in opposition? Any individuals like to speak in opposition? All right, so we're going to go ahead and close all public comments. Do you want me to give you guys like a 5-minute break to answer some of these questions? You want to do that? Let's go ahead and do that. It's 7:04. Why don't we go ahead and take a break and resume at 7:10? All right. Thank you.
try it.
All right, everyone. Thank you for your patience. We're going to go ahead and end the break and resume our meeting. So if we can, may you please address some of these concerns and issues brought up by the public, please?
Yes, I will do that, and I'm going to kind of take them slightly out of order. I did want to address some of the concerns expressed by Kyle Schmidt about the environmental impact report. And just as a point of reminder, an environmental impact report, the goal of that is to study the impact of the project on the existing area. So it is not to study existing conditions, it's to look at the change. What change is caused by the project, which would be the implementation of the specific plan. And so the noise monitors were placed in areas of greatest change in the Tower District, and in the area that Mr. Schmidt was referencing around the industrial, there are no significant land use changes there, whereas the more significant land use changes are along the corridors. And so that's why the land use monitors were positioned there. In addition, there is noise monitoring, there are future noise studies required for discretionary projects in the Tower District specific plan. So I did want to address that. I also will state that the disparities that Mr. Schmidt mentions in his letter are also described in the Tower District specific plan as a way for all the users of the plan to be very mindful about balance in the area. There's balance between preserving the neighborhood character, which benefits everyone in the neighborhood, and trying to provide affordable housing and safe transportation. So the plan tries to balance all of those things. I will move on to, let me find my notes here. Mr. Brannick's comments about the design standards, asking about why road closure prohibitions don't apply in the industrial zones, and I'm going to say that there needs to be freight movement in those zones, and so that's why those aren't included there. As far as the height provision in the design guidelines, the idea is that anytime buildings are proposed next to designated historic resources, that they do not overpower that building with height that's in excess of that historic resource. And so we would assert that that is sufficient. I think Mr. Brannick wanted some additional provisions there. And then the industrial zoning of the cheese building, that is being left in place. The plan does not propose a change. It is currently zoned industrial, and our understanding is that that would facilitate the proposed new use there, which is radio bilingue and their antennas and equipment that they need for broadcasting. Also about the implementation matrix, that's chapter 7, and we do appreciate the comments on that. And Mr. Brannick spoke of the proposed consolidation of the Tower District Implementation Committee, which oversaw this specific plan process, and the Design Review Committee, and consolidating those. And that is one of the proposed items in the implementation chapter. So a couple of other things I will point out. As far as the rezoning of the one proposed and 2 designated historical neighborhoods from medium density residential to medium low, I did want to point out that still those neighborhoods are subject to all the new flexibility and provisions in state law, so that those lots could be split. They could accommodate, up to at least 2 detached accessory dwelling units and maybe an attached one. So those neighborhoods are subject to all the same state laws that facilitate more density that any other single-family neighborhood would be subject to. So I did want to point that out. And lastly, we did consider Mr. Zamora's land use change request. This would be number 5 on the list. The property is about a little over a half an acre. It is currently planned and zoned general commercial. The plan proposes neighborhood mixed use. It's located near Palm and Belmont. And his request would cause a loss of approximately 30 housing units, 30 proposed housing units if it stayed commercial mixed use. And that change can be accommodated within the EIR. Essentially, it would remain as it is planned and zoned today as general commercial. So we will be looking for your recommendation on these, the land use change requests, in addition to the recommendation that was set forth in your packet.
Perfect. And then just for the record and just for clarification, I know that there was a mention in regards to maybe downzoning certain issues due to zoning issues due to race. In regards to the city and the committee itself, is race a factor in making any kind of decisions regarding zoning?
It is not.
All right. Thank you. Any questions or comments? I see none. Thank you very much.
Yes. May I also would like to just recognize two other members of the committee that are here this evening that I should have recognized long before. We have Joe Catania and Michael Birdsong, who are long-term, dedicated members of practically every tower committee that you could be on, and we're very grateful for their participation in the process. So, as well as our fearless leader, Chris Johnson, I just really wanted to thank them and recognize them.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, guys. Well, we'll bring it back to the commission. Do we have any comments, questions, motions? Well, you know what? Why don't we do this? I'm going to start with you. If maybe we can go ahead and maybe comment on the item or gain your input before we make any kind of motion. Is that okay?
You know, actually just listening to the whole presentation, I mean, spending years and years, you know, starting in the 90s when I was a little child, I'm like, oh my goodness, that has been a while. It has, so what I heard, the community, the city did an amazing collaboration for years and years. So I'm actually for it.
Perfect. Yeah. Commissioner Calandra?
I remember back in the early 90s when they were, when the first plan came out. And I was at the Downtown Association at the time and was very interested in what happened in the tower because they were so adjacent. And I'm really happy to see the transformation that is going to be happening with the new plan with the corridors. And it's just, I think a lot of hard work went into it. A lot of dedicated people put a lot of time into it. And I'm definitely in support of it.
Thank you. Vice Chair Bray.
My grandma lived in the Tower District on Thorn Avenue, so I remember Miller's Drugs, where my husband's parents met, and my husband's grandma lived on Arthur, so Towers always held a special place in my heart. And also during all these years I've been a planning groupie, I've always looked at the Tower District as a really good example of how we ought to plan our neighborhoods. There's a real mix of single-family homes and smaller multifamily properties that just seem to work really well. So I'm very in favor of this plan, and I'm happy to see that we're going to continue to keep the character of Tower District, even though there's no more Carnation or some of the places where we used to go to eat at the chicken pie shop and those places. So it's still a great place, and I think I'm glad to see we're keeping it that way.
Awesome. I too am going to be in favor of this. I think growing up, living near McLean High School, when we used to go and play against Fresno High, it felt like it was a whole different city, right? I think the furthest that I traveled when I grew up was Merced. And Tower was always very unique to me too. But I'm glad that there's tons of public input, a lot of engagement. I want to say I hope that the city and everyone is proud of the work that you guys have done too, Sophia and your team and the committee. Mr. Marco, I hope you realize too that, the city is always willing to listen to, right? And I'm glad that you're here tonight. I'm glad that you're here tonight. And, I hope you realize that the city is here. They're very receptive. And I'm glad that you're able to reach out. And we're going to find a way that hopefully in our motion to consider that too. Okay? Yep.
I would just like to say thank you to city staff for working so hard. The Tower District is already beautiful. It's a very popular area in the Central Valley. It attracts people not only from Fresno, from Clovis, but from everywhere in the Central Valley. So I think this is just going to make it better. It's going to be better for Fresno, better for our business, better for everybody, especially those citizens that live in the Tower District. I would say the request number 5 from Mr. Zamora is not unreasonable. I believe it could change, but if the person that owns the property is not willing to make the changes, then what good is that going to bring? So I believe all requests are reasonable, and I would recommend, I would recommend to City Council, I make a motion for staff recommendation, including request number 4 and Mr. Samora's request number 5, as earlier stated. And then do I need to read all of the statements of overriding considerations as well, or would that work? Okay, well, that is my motion.
Awesome. So we have a motion made by Commissioner Day. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll go ahead and have a second by Vice Chair Bray. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Motion's approved. Thank you.
Chair Ben, I forgot to add one thing. I have always appreciated Tower Theater because, they do host a lot of diverse concerts. There is all kind of beautiful things that happen at the Tower Theater. So I think that's one of the most unique place that Tower has, the Tower Theater. So because I do have a lot of memories for that place, and I'll probably be attending another thing pretty soon over there. So just keep it up.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, thank you, everyone. We'll go ahead and move to the next item. We have a workshop on subdivision maps, process sponsors by the wonderful Mr. Rob.
Back by popular demand, Planner Rob Holt.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Rob Holt, Supervising Planner with Planning and Development, and today we will be discussing the wonderful world of subdivisions. We were doing a subdivision maps workshop. This workshop is going to go over the process and design of subdivisions in the city of Fresno, as well as the expiration and revisions of subdivision maps, and then followed up with a Q&A if you have any questions. Should be noted that subdivisions are one of the few entitlements where the review authority is the Planning Commission and not staff. So you'll see a lot of these. We do have a lot in queue that are coming up in the near future that you'll see. I think it's appropriate. It should be noted also, every image in this presentation is in the city of Fresno. So trying to keep it relevant. We're going to start with the subdivision map process and design. Wanted to show that what goes into map design and what's brought to you when it comes to commission is the final product. This is showing everything that goes into that final product to make sure that it does comply with the code, so you understand what we all have to review. So starting with just the basics, there are 2 different types of maps. There's parcel maps and tentative maps, or what we call them here, tentative tract maps. Parcel maps are usually 4 or fewer parcels. There are limitations, and that's really just for residential. You can have more with non-residential zones, but that's a standard. And with tentative maps, it's 5 or more parcels, and that's generally single unit residential development. There are vesting maps. You might notice that term a lot in some of these, where if it's submitted prior to a code being updated, it still has that vesting right of whatever those code requirements were. So starting when looking and reviewing an application for a tentative subdivision map, we first look at something called density, which is how dense a project is allowed based on the zone district, and that's calculated for subdivision maps using what's called net acreage. There's gross, which is the entire land plus all of the major areas, streets, dedications, things like that, but the net removes those dedications. If you have over large power line easements, we don't count that towards net acreage because you can't build on those things. So that's basically subtracted from that. The density can be, the minimum density can be 0.5 less than what's required. So for RS5, we have a minimum of 5. You can have 4.5 and round it up because that's what our code allows. What we can't allow is rounding down or rounding up maximum density. And once you hit 0.01 on the max, you have to go down. So you can't round up. So an example, if you have a property that's 20 gross acres, but taking out the dedications, taking out anything else, it's 15 net acres, you would do your minimum, 5, let's say it's RS5, times 15 acres, which is 75 dwelling units, and then you do 15 acres times 12 dwelling units per acre, which is 180, that's your range. So as long as they have that number of lots, that's compliant. So we make sure that is done. And then additionally, and I'll show kind of a table that'll help summarize this, we also look at lot size, depth, and width. So we need to make sure that all lots comply with the minimum and maximum lot size, which is the area of the lot, depth, and width requirements. There are exceptions, which I have the code section listed, but essentially there's an exception that allows 25% of the overall number of lots to be up to 20% smaller in area, width, or depth without requiring any other planned development, or you can modify that standard to allow for that by right. And if a lot exceeds the maximum, so that's if you want to go underneath the minimum, if you exceed the maximum, as long as the density complies, you can do that. So don't have to look into this in depth, but this is the table that we use. I have highlighted kind of in gray the more common zone districts we deal with, RS4, RS5, and this talks about here's the minimum lot sizes, here's the maximum lot size, here's your standard requirements for lot width, whether it's a general interior lot, a corner lot, a cul-de-sac or a curved lot, and then depth, and whether they abut a major street or a railroad. We have to make sure every single lot complies with this or with that exception allowance. So this is something also I want to include. It's called a remainder parcel. That does come with subdivisions sometimes, and I'll show an example right after this. Essentially, a remainder parcel, which a subdivider can propose, it's not counted towards a lot or towards density. So if you had a 4-lot subdivision and the other lot is a remainder, that's technically a parcel map. It's not a tract map. So also, if you had 75 lots on this one area and another portion is a remainder, we don't count that towards the density. We just count the area that's being subdivided without the remainder. This can come up. Generally, we see it, and this is an example that was approved earlier this year at McKinley and Armstrong. This was all, what you're looking at right now before it came to you was all one lot. And what they wanted to do was subdivide everything. And of course, you see McKinley Avenue that was an alignment, that wasn't there. So when I say net acreage, you take McKinley out of there because that's dedication of a major street that you don't count. That's not part of the net. So those lots that remainder was the person that was selling it. They wanted to still live there, but be able to sell off the remainder of their land to the developer. And so that they can continue to live there until they pass it on to the next person. So they say, okay, we'll take this remainder, we won't count it towards this subdivision, and we can subdivide everything else. That's the purpose of a remainder lot and how it works. There are requirements for block lengths. So within a subdivision, the length is generally a minimum of 200, max of 600 feet. When the next intersection comes, then that's the next block, so on and so forth. There could be a deviation if the alignment of existing streets on adjacent properties justifies that, but that's the standard. And just going quickly through the lots, side lot lines are required at right angles to the street, or if radial, if curved. What that means is the new properties cannot go straight and then have a jotted line and then go back again. It has to be all straight lines throughout, like normal. It can't be on the side. So that's what that means. Frontage, the frontage of lots to public streets is required unless there are private streets proposed or if there's access to a paseo proposed. And double frontage lots are lots that where the street, the property has two streets fronting and rearing the property. So they're by themselves, there's no property behind you or in front of you. And those are allowed for major streets, so major streets we'll get into, but for major streets where you relinquish the access, meaning you get rid of any kind of pedestrian access from one side, which is usually along the major street, and so that would be allowed there, but you need a 10-foot landscape area as well as a 6-foot wall to allow for that. For local streets, not some of the majors, not like a Gettysburg or a Shaw, they're only allowed at a depth of less than 200 feet, and they have to relinquish on one of the sides for a local street. So getting further into double frontage lots. So as I had said earlier, if it abuts a major street, you relinquish access on the major street, and you have a 10-foot landscape area along there with a 6-foot wall. Now, there's the next thing, which says, should an operative plan require a greater landscape area, the wall shall be placed at the rear of the landscape setback. I'll get to that in just a minute. The other two things are if a greater landscape area may be required to ensure that visibility is maintained for adjacent properties, which could include driveway and garage locations, fences, trees, etc., of neighboring properties. And also a greater landscape area may also be required by the review authority, i.e. you, when, in the opinion of yourself, a greater landscape area would be more in harmony and would add visual interest to the streetscape when adjacent properties also face that major street.
When you say double frontage, are you referring to, like, say, Herndon between, say, Van Ness and Marks, where you have houses that have a street, and then there's like the bike path, and then there's Herndon?
So yeah, that's a good question, Commissioner Calandra. So on Herndon, take any house that has the rear yard abuts Herndon Avenue, or the sidewalk along Herndon Avenue, or the trail along Herndon Avenue, and in front of that house is another street. That's what a double frontage lot is. It's a street, house, street, instead of street, house, house, street. So
I had a comment
Sure.
too. I know this sounds kind of silly, but I the whole time was trying to envision a double frontage lot in my head. So can I know this sounds funny, maybe like a little picture next to it?
I actually have pictures all in this, so
okay.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So going back to that previous comment, the second one, should an operative plan. So the standard is along major streets, we need at least a minimum 10-foot landscape outlot. That's required for double frontage lots. That said, if a community plan or a specific plan provides greater landscape areas, then we have to implement those. And so I did pull some from some of our plans, just briefly go over it, and I'll show you an example of it right here, right after. But the Roosevelt Community Plan has a policy that says you shall have a 15-foot landscape boulevard along arterial and collector streets south of Belmont and east of Chestnut. Bullard Community Plan has different requirements depending where you are, 15 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, as well as 50 feet. Woodward Park has their own community plan with their own setbacks, and just recently adopted the West Area Neighborhood Specific Plan has a 30-foot along Veterans and Grantland. So double frontage lots, here you go. So you can see this is the subdivision that was approved a year or two ago that's, I think, still under construction, but it's being built pretty quick. This is out on the southeast corner of Belmont and Armstrong. It was track 6299, if anyone remembers. So in this example, for a double frontage lot with that 10-foot, this is actually in the Roosevelt Community Plan, which has a 15-foot requirement, not 10 feet. So because you have a double frontage lot, we have in the green there, that was the plan at the time that we approved, and it was a 15-foot landscape setback. Now, looking at it built today, you can see that 15-foot up to the sidewalk with the wall is there along those double frontage lots. And that's Belmont Avenue. Same exact subdivision, just coming up to the first entrance of the subdivision. On the map here, the red is Belmont, which is the major street. The blue is, I don't know the street name, but it's a local street. So for corner lots that have entrances, so when a local street, the blue, intersects the major street, the red, which is the entrance of a subdivision usually, and those corner lots have side yards onto the local street, the blue, the street side yard requires that we do a 10-foot landscape easement along with a wall. And these are usually incorporated as something called outlots. Outlots are lots that are dedicated for a specific purpose. It could be public, landscape, open space, paseo, or private utilities and things like that. So the green shows that 10-foot outlot and how it's built today, coming off of the major street onto the side of the local. That's a requirement that we have to ensure is brought to you per code. Another thing within subdivisions, within local streets, getting into the nitty-gritty of the details of the subdivisions for local streets, it's corner lots when a street side yard faces the front yard of a home across the street. You have an option of either a 5-foot landscape easement with a wall or a 4-foot park strip between the curb and sidewalk. In here on the yellow are the front, with the red line across it, those are the houses on the image on the left. And then the blue is the side on the right with the red arrow. So because that street side faces across the street from homes, so the front yard, it needs that 5-foot landscape easement and a wall, which is what they did. They could have also did a 4-foot park strip, either way. So that's what that means, and that's how that works. For connectivity and street design, we also look into, so there's 3 things: local streets, connectors, and majors. Locals are your standard interior within the subdivision, your standard local street, minimum right-of-way, and we base it on public works standards. Connector streets I'll get into, but it's defined as streets that connect major streets through the center of quarter sections, both north-south and east-west, or as close as reasonably possible to the center alignment based on existing features. It sounds confusing. I'll show some pictures that make it a little easier. And then major streets are just your standard collector, arterial, super arterial, and expressway. Herndon is an expressway. Veterans is a super arterial. Gettysburg in some places is a collector. So getting to connector streets. So some work perfect, some do not. So here you can kind of see the 4 corners of the major streets, and the yellow are the connector streets. So connectors, I call them glorified local streets. They're a little wider than your standard local. The purpose is to get everyone within that major intersection, the 4 bounded streets, to a street that can get you quicker to that major street without having to go to an extended speed. So you can kind of see a lot of these streets that go east, west, north, south throughout, they all have a stopping point before it gets to the major street. They never connect. That's the purpose of those connector streets. But sometimes we don't get that. And so here is an example of a few maps we've approved in the past that this planning commission has approved, where because of the existing alignment, there's a basin, there's houses that back onto it. Again, the purpose is center. We want to be in the center of these sections. It doesn't happen, so there's workarounds based on existing features. Here, there was Florence Avenue, which kind of went, the subdivision to the east of the blue kind of went this one direction, and then the blue subdivision, which you kind of see a picture of, connected to it and continued it. You can see that Florence on the west side, west of the blue, it kind of goes up and divvies into this parcel to the west, which eventually, when that gets developed, will connect the existing to the existing Florence. So it's not always perfect, but we try to at least get that connector to get you from one spot to another without having to get interrupted. So now, connections to adjacent areas. So where the subdivision adjoins unsubdivided land, stub end streets shall be extended to the adjacent unsubdivided land to provide access to the unsubdivided land in the event of its future subdivision. And there's one connection required for every 600 feet of adjacency. That stub street is to be designed as a temporary turnaround. You might look like a cul-de-sac to you. I'll give you an example. This is not applicable to planned developments for gated subdivisions. So what all that means is on the right pane here, you'll see that as a subdivision that was approved earlier this year in Cornelia near McKinley. And there's kind of both examples. So there's existing connection to the eastern subdivision that's already built out that they proposed. And then all of this is what I call like zoning, similar zoning. It's all residential single unit. It's all RS something. So when there's availability, large areas that aren't developed on adjacent properties, you want to connect to that for future subdivision in case the next person 10 years down the road that wants to develop this can connect to that. Now, if this was a gated community, we wouldn't consider it because it's going to be walled and it is what it is. But how that is done, you can see going to the north, there you see kind of a circle there. That's a temporary turnaround. The applicant has an opportunity to contact the adjacent owner to see if they can build it on their property so that in the future we won't have this turnaround to deal with that just looks weird and goes, that way it's just a straight road. The person can demolish the turnaround and keep building. So that's the purpose of this. Now, that's not always the case with temporary turnarounds if it's just one lot in. The purpose of the temporary turnaround, by the way, is for fire and solid waste. If they needed to go up there and turn around because there's nowhere else to go, they need to have that sufficient turnaround space. If it's only one, going back to the previous slides, there's that one subdivision. If there's only one lot, it's not needed because they don't need to get to that street. They'll put the totes out in front. You know, they can serve it to the front. So that's kind of the purpose. And you can see to the west here, that's not in this location. It's just a little north on Dory. But they did that. So this is what it looks like where they did a temporary turnaround where hopefully in the future that'll punch through at some point. So quickly here, emergency vehicle access, known as EVAs, are points of areas and subdivisions that are gates that are usually only accessed by fire or some emergency vehicle. And then pedestrian access to major streets. For subdivisions adjacent to a major street, if you need a pedestrian path spaced no more than 600 feet apart, usually it's a paseo. I can show an example. So starting with EVAs, we have this map in Copper River where on the map, the blue area is the private gated pedestrian access point. And that's the only one. And so usually you need 2 points of access for fire. And so in kind of on that map, I have a couple of red squares. That's where the EVA gates are. You might see them all around Fresno. That's what it looks like to the left, where usually the public can't use that, but fire can access it if they need to get in and out, in case they can't make a specific turnaround or something like that. For pedestrian access to major streets, so if you have kind of larger subdivisions that have wider depth or longer depth or wider width, it may be longer than 600 feet. It may be 1,300 feet long property. You'll need to, and it's all along a major street. You'll need to have some kind of paseo so that when someone lives way deep in the subdivision, they don't have to walk an enormous amount just to get out of the subdivision. There's paseos that let you get out and access schools, transportation, whatever you need. And so here's an example of a great feature for the entrance of the subdivision at the corner, in case you live maybe all the way far to the left and you have to walk all the way around or all the way up to get up there. You can just hit that corner and you're good. So that's what that is about. Trails. So incorporation of site constraints. We have planned trails all throughout the city, and when we do have planned trails, we have to incorporate them in our subdivision design. And what it states is homes should front onto a trail or other communal area unless topographic conditions justify a variation from it, the proposed homes would face a major street, or the Planning Commission determines there are no feasible alternatives. So I'm going to show you an example of what happened prior to this code and why this code exists today. So here you can see a trail that has homes that side and back onto it all the way down the corridor. And so the homes are not facing the trail, they're not fronting the trail. Usually when you front a trail, the intent is you have eyes on the trail. The front of the home can see the trail. Here, if someone were to bike or even walk, maybe at night or something, way down this trail and there's issues with crime in this area or something's going on, there's really no preventive measure of someone to help or you to get some help from somebody. Nobody can see you. It's just a dead-end area that you feel like so it's probably not going to be utilized as much. So that's when that code came into play, and this was a subdivision approved a couple of years ago. Originally, when it was first approved, it didn't have that requirement. Now they came back because it expired, and that requirement was now in place. And it's being constructed today. Here you can see the red line is the front of all these homes with a street looking at the trail. It also allows for the siding. So if you see the home on the top right, that pink line, it's siding onto the trail, but it's not backing onto it. So that's also allowed because usually the side would lead to a street. And when you do that, then you start getting things like this, where you have homes that front onto the trail. They're looking across. You would feel much more safe going down this trail because you know that there's eyes on the trail. Someone can see you if something happens. Now, getting into open space, I want to make sure that you understand planned trails do not count towards open space calculations, so keep that in mind for future. But open space for single unit development, it applies when you have more than 50 parcels. If you have 50 parcels or less on a map, you're not required to have open space. You just pay in lieu fees, although you can provide it if you want to. It's just not a requirement. When you have more than 50, there's this number that I have ingrained in my head that's 0.001884 acres per dwelling unit. And that stems from our general plan, which says we need to dedicate 0.6 acres per 1,000 residents. That's where that number stems from. So when you have a subdivision that requires open space, to give you an example or kind of a thought, if you have 51 lots, that results in about 4,100 square feet of open space. If you have 150, you're looking at about 12,000. 300 lots, you're looking at, a little over half an acre. So just to get a sense of when you see that open space, if you feel like it's not enough, it's a requirement for code to make sure it's enough. And the location should require that 50% of that park should be abutting a street, a trail, a sidewalk, something accessible, visible to people. And then homes should generally face or side the park, not be in the rear. And they should be centrally located. There are some times where that doesn't happen. They could be split up, but they generally should be centrally located. And then getting into the expiration and revisions. Expirations of map, the standard for all maps is 2 years. There are discretionary extensions that an applicant or developer can propose or request to us. That does have to get approved by the Planning Commission. And usually that comes in 1 or 2 year increments and up to 6 years. Sometimes it's just the market conditions. Sometimes it's, at a time it was COVID, so it just depends what it is. And there have been legislative extensions in the past and upcoming and current that allow for automatic extensions. So, and then there's something called phased maps. So when a tentative map, which is what you review, gets approved, they then actually, it's not approved, has to go to final map, is what it's called, and to get recorded. That's where the actual lots become legal, and that goes through our Public Works Department. As part of that, they can do a phased map where, let's say you have a 500 or 1,000 lot subdivision, a very large. Usually there are requirements from Public Works, from other departments, that are pretty significant on cost and everything, and so they want to do it in phases. I want to do 100 lots first, then the next 100, maybe another developer wants to buy this portion and do that. And so we phase it out. Now, it should be noted that phased maps, the word of phased map is all is needed on tentative maps. It is actually under the MAP Act that they don't have to draw out the phase lines if they don't want to. That comes at final. So at final, we make sure that whatever was conditioned at tentative gets built just in a logical manner. So minor revisions, which are director level decisions, that's something that you usually don't see, are things like maybe the lot size, shape, they're changing, but it's all in substantial compliance. That's a minor. The number of lots, units, or sites is not reduced based on what they're proposing, and there's none that are added. The amount of open space is not reduced. Maybe it's moving. Pedestrian connectivity to schools is not reduced, and all the changes are consistent with the original intent of the approval. And then there's no resulting violation. So these are all minor revisions. Major revisions come as a director's report. We just came to you with one, I think, last meeting or the meeting before, where it's a pretty large, significant change, but really it's just our director letting you know, hey, this is what's going on. We're intending to approve it, but just wanted to let you know it does comply. So if you have, the amendment has to be consistent with the code and the original intent of the map. And then it allows for a one-time increase in the number of lots. And you can kind of see here, if you have 25 or less, you get no more than 2. 26 to 50, no more than 3, so on and so forth. So those are major revisions to maps. And then this, we don't have to go through. I just wanted to let you know that, in addition to the Fresno Municipal Code findings for tentative maps, the MAP Act also has grounds for denial of a tentative map. So there are 2 aspects to it, and any one of these, not all of them, but it says the approval of proposed subdivision map shall be denied if any of the following findings are made. So we make sure that none of these, are inconsistent. If the applicant wants to move forward because it is, we can do that. But we make sure that they're not. And so that wraps it up, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Hey, Rob, well, first off, great presentation. I didn't expect anything less from you, too. Okay? All right? But I think this kind of goes to show, I know sometimes we come up with a lot of questions and we ask you to make a lot of these revisions, but I think this is very kind of applicable to what we do all the time, because this allows us to see the insight and the amount of due diligence that you and the team actually do too. So thank you, I appreciate the presentation. Any questions, comments? Go ahead.
I have a question that somewhat relates to the two plans that we just approved, the West Plan and the Tower District. And I mean, the Tower District is pretty much a grid. And in the West Plan, it said that streets would have, they would be through, so that there wouldn't be cul-de-sacs, and it makes it more walkable. And is that going to be applied citywide going forward, that new subdivisions will not have those cul-de-sacs and make it hard to get from one place to another?
Yeah, so great question, Commissioner Calandra. All subdivisions all projects in general, but all subdivisions would be required to be reviewed for not just our general plan, but any specific community plan. As I had said previously in the presentation, we have to comply with those landscape setbacks. That's just one policy. That's not the only thing. We have to make sure if there's anything else that's applicable to a subdivision in terms of street alignment, things like that, that's also within a community or a specific plan, we have to make sure that it complies with that as well.
But as a general rule, I mean, citywide, does that policy apply? Or is it only to those plan areas that incorporated in the plan?
It's only within those plan areas if that policy is specific to that area.
But the general plan discourages cul-de-sacs. So most of the specific plans that you'll see coming forward will discourage cul-de-sacs and encourage through streets. Yep.
So my question is about the parks. So, for a long time, Fresno has been like a desert. Like, when I say desert, I mean parks. Our parks are like packed up. We don't have enough parks with all the population. I mean, we have almost 600,000 people that resides just in the city of Fresno. So the park requirement, is it for new developments that are happening, that we're approving or the city is approving? How about the plans that has been approved already?
So the open space requirements for the subdivisions, that's with any new subdivision.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what it applies to.
Okay.
Awesome. Rob, thank you. Appreciate
Thank you.
All right, next workshop, appeals process.
That's a tough act to follow. Good evening, Commissioners. Philip Segrist, Planning and Development Department. This next presentation is on an overview of the appeal process. I'll be giving the first half of the presentation, and then I'll turn it over to Israel Trejo. So again, tonight's workshop is to provide the Commission just a general overview of the appeal process. So we'll discuss what projects can be appealed, who can appeal those projects, as well as the general appeal procedures. That includes noticing, and what the Planning Commission might consider when they're hearing an appeal, including findings that they should consider. So according to the Development Code, any action that's made by the Director or the Planning Commission may be appealed. More specifically, any action that's made by the Director to approve or deny an application can be appealed to the Planning Commission. And so who can appeal that? Any person that's aggrieved by the decision can appeal that decision. It doesn't matter where they live. Anybody can file that appeal. It can also be the applicant who filed that application. If we took the action to deny their application, the applicant appeal that to the commission for the commission to consider, or maybe if there were a specific condition that were included in the conditions of approval that the applicant didn't agree with, they can also appeal those specific conditions to the Planning Commission. And then as well, again, nearby neighbors who might have a concern with the approval of a project, they can also file an appeal. In addition, actions that are made by the Planning Commission, those can be appealed to the City Council, but unlike direct actions by the director, those appeals can only be made by the council district in which the project is located in or by the mayor. And then lastly, environmental determinations can also be appealed. And unlike actions of the director or the Planning Commission, if we receive an appeal on that, those decisions go directly to the City Council. And for time limits, and procedures, the Development Code requires that all appeals shall be filed within 15 days of the date the action was taken. That also includes other decisions and CEQA determinations. So for example, if the director approved a project today, the last day to file a timely appeal would be November 20th. So if we don't receive an appeal by November 21st, that action, that decision or approval, denial, whatever that be, that's final. So when an appeal is filed in a timely manner, the appeal shall stay all proceedings in the matter that's appealed. So that means the original decision is stayed. It's basically put on hold until the appeal is resolved. This prevents projects from moving forward while the appeal is under review. So no building permits or development or operations can commence until the appeal has been resolved.
Hey, Philip.
Yes.
On the appeal, is there like a specific process for the appeal, or like is there a specific communication? Can it just be like an email or like a formal?
So the Development Code does state that it does need to be in writing and addressed to the director and state the reasons why they are appealing that, the decision.
So it can be like a fax, email, letter, as long as it's written. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, we do take written and emailed communication, so long as it clearly states the reason why, who they are, yes.
Okay.
And then furthermore, when an item is appealed, it shall be scheduled for consideration within 40 days of receiving that appeal. And so when we have that, the director, through the staff, will prepare a staff report and the administrative record that will be the action that was taken, the appeal that was filed, all the conditions, the department agency comments, as well as comments that we received from the public on that. And that's bundled up in the staff reports that you typically receive, and those are provided to you usually the Friday before the scheduled hearing when the agenda is made available to the public. Also, appeals can be withdrawn by the appellant. At any time, they can choose to withdraw their appeal. And then when that occurs, in instances where maybe an appeal was filed by multiple people, well, if one person withdraws but the others don't, well, the item still needs to be considered. We would need to have all appellants who appealed that decision, they would have to be included in that withdrawal. And the decision-making body can permit a withdrawal anytime prior to rendering a decision. So, strangely, I don't think it would ever happen, but in the middle of a hearing, before the commission would make a decision on that appeal, if the appellant wished to withdraw, the commission could consider that withdrawal. And then once a decision is withdrawn, the original decision will be reinstated. So if the director approved an application and an appellant appealed that decision, and then they withdraw it, well, then it goes back to approval. And then public hearing notices. So prior to an appeal being considered by the Planning Commission or the City Council, a public hearing notice is mailed out at least 10 business days, or not 10 business days, just 10 days before the scheduled hearing. That notice is mailed to the applicant and the property owner. It's mailed to the appellant who filed the appeal. It's also mailed to property owners within 1,000 feet of the subject property, as well as any other persons who requested to receive any kind of notice on that application. In addition, it's also posted to the city clerk's website. And so when considering or taking action on appeal, a majority vote is required in order to grant or approve an appeal. And a tie vote is the same as rejecting or denying an appeal. And the Planning Commission generally has two options when considering an appeal. They could deny the appeal and uphold the director's decision, or they can choose to grant the appeal and overturn the director's decision. And in making a decision, the Planning Commission must find that either there's sufficient evidence in the record that all the required findings can be made, or there's insufficient evidence in the record that all the required findings cannot be made. And so if overturning the director's decision, the commission must amend the required findings. So an example would be in the instance where the director might deny a request for a conditional use permit to sell alcohol for off-site consumption. If that project didn't comply with the development code standards and staff found that the required findings cannot be made, if the commission chose to overturn that decision, the commission would have to find, hey, yes, the project does in fact meet all the development code standards. It complies with location restrictions, et cetera. And then it also would have to amend or make all the required findings and amend those findings in order to approve that decision, or that application. And then we will segue into the findings that Israel will cover.
All right, excuse me, good evening again, Commissioners. Israel with the Planning Department. So just want to give a little bit more information on findings. So both Sophia and Rob mentioned findings. So many different types of projects, most of the projects that we process require findings. What are findings? Findings are written explanations of why legally and factually the Planning Commission made a particular decision. They show how the commission applied the evidence presented to reach its final conclusion. So what does that mean? So it's basically, it's showing your work. So as you know, there's findings that are attached to the staff reports that you receive. And basically it's the Planning Commission telling the world how you approved a project. So all the findings must be made in order to approve a project. As Phil mentioned, if one of the findings can't be made, then that project must be denied. So what are findings? So findings are required to be supported by substantial evidence in the record. And the record includes, but is not limited to, an application. So the staff reports that you see typically include a site plan, elevations, an operational statement, and all that is record information that the Planning Commission uses as substantial evidence to make a certain finding. Also, what else is the record? Correspondence between city staff and the applicant, the staff report. There's a lot of information that is provided within the staff reports that you find that is part of the record. The environmental assessments that you receive is also part of the record. I know that environmental assessments can be pretty lengthy. They can range from anywhere from 1 page to 300 or 400 pages, but all of that is part of the record. Public comment. So when members of the public come up and say, hey, I see, X, Y, and Z on a property. I see this rare plant or this rare species on the property. That's also included as part of the record. Written testimony is part of the record, as well as general specific plans as well as the municipal code. So next, just want to quickly go over findings for a conditional use permit. I know it's getting late, so I'll go quick. So there are 6 findings that must be made for a conditional use permit. Pretty straightforward. Some are pretty straightforward. Some will require some deeper analysis. So the first one on the slide here, the first bullet point is the proposed use is allowed with the applicable zoning district and complies with all other applicable provisions of the code and all other chapters of the municipal code. Pretty straightforward. Is the example that Philip used, a liquor store allowed in a certain zone district. So that's pretty straightforward. Is the proposed use consistent with a general plan and any other applicable plan and design guideline that the city has adopted? So is there is in the findings that staff prepares, there are general plan policies that staff prepares showing whether a project is consistent with the general plan. The proposed use will not be substantially adverse to the public health, safety, or general welfare. So using that same example as a liquor store, we route our projects to various departments and agencies. One of those included is the police department, and typically the police department will have a requirement for maybe security or training for staff that let's say it's a nightclub that there'd be a certain amount of security on site, as well as the bartenders have training to sell alcohol. Also, fourth finding is that the design, location, and size and operating characteristics of the proposed activity are compatible with the existing and reasonably foreseeable future land uses in the vicinity. So conditional use permits, those are typically more intensive uses than a development permit. So a conditional use permit requires public noticing to the neighbors within 1,000 feet of the site, whereas a development permit does not. So again, staff does provide findings within the staff report. Next finding is the site is physically suitable for the type, density, and intensity. Again, we route the projects to various departments and agencies, including Public Works and Public Utilities, and they provide their conditions on the project, which are included as conditions of approval. And last but not least, the proposed use is consistent with the Fresno County Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan. So there are 3 airports in the city of Fresno. There's Sierra, forget the one in Southwest, Chandler, and then of course the FYI. So we have a plan that says, if you're in proximity to the airport, you may or may not be allowed to do certain types of uses. For example, we wouldn't want like a stadium, close to an airport. Next is our findings for a development permit. These definitely aren't as intense as a conditional use permit. Again, conditional use permits uses are typically more intense than a permit that would be allowed by right with no public noticing under a development permit. So first finding is that the applicable standards and requirements of the code are complied with. Pretty straightforward. Does the project comply with setbacks, height, parking, open space, so on and so forth? The general plan and any operative plan or policies that the city has adopted. So again, staff prepares the findings, which are included in the staff report. Any applicable design guidelines adopted by the city council. If there are any related applications, including a tentative map, conditional use permit, the development permit must be in compliance with those related applications. And the last finding for a development permit is, as I mentioned earlier, must comply with the Fresno County Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan. So Philip did go over findings. So we prepare findings in our staff report typically for approval, and if the Planning Commission decides to approve that project, there's no changes to those findings that must be done. However, if the Planning Commission decides to not, use those, not go with the recommendation of staff, any finding that the Planning Commission, so one of the findings, in order to deny a project, one of the findings must not be able to be complied with, and the Planning Commission will have to make that finding, and there have to be substantial evidence to make that finding, which I mentioned earlier. The evidence, substantially supported by evidence in the record, including, utilizing the site plan, operational statement, public testimony, so on and so forth. Also did want to briefly talk about, oftentimes we hear maybe a neighbor or someone coming to the hearing, we want a traffic signal, for example, on a project. So there must be, you'll hear the terms nexus and proportionality thrown around. And so what does that mean? So the nexus is how can I explain this? So the condition must be related to a direct effect of the project. So for example, if you have, obviously if you have a 50-unit apartment complex, that's going to generate a traffic. So the nexus, in my opinion, is pretty easy to find for a condition. The tough part is the proportionality. So the condition that staff applies must be proportional to the condition that either staff is requiring or potentially the Planning Commission wants to require. So for example, if there's a 50-unit apartment complex, Planning Commission may want to require a traffic signal. And again, the nexus is easy. A 50-unit apartment complex is going to create more traffic, but the issue is proportionality. A 50-unit apartment complex would not require, would not be proportion to require a traffic signal. Traffic signals can cost upwards of $1 million. This slide here kind of just shows the findings that are attached to the staff report. I know you all have seen that before. And last item is just a housekeeping type slide. Again, we understand that the staff report can be pretty lengthy, but it's best practice to obviously to review the packets, familiarize yourself with the findings, and review the evidence and any objections that are noted. That concludes my presentation. Can answer any questions you may have.
Awesome, thank you. I think one thing I appreciate the most when I get those staff reports is whenever there's any kind of like appeal letter or letters from the public, city, the staff, you guys always do a good job of answering some of those questions, right? And making sure that we kind of understand where you guys are coming from too. So appreciate it. Questions or comments? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Any reports from the secretary?
I just have two things. So I asked in particular to do the appeals workshop tonight. We do have some appeals coming up over the next couple of meetings, so we just wanted you to be prepared to get a refresher on that. The other is that we have sent a notice to the newspaper for a couple of upcoming hearings. So you've heard the West Area Neighborhood Specific Plan, you've heard the Tower District Specific Plan. So coming up on your next meeting will be the Southeast Development Area Specific Plan is coming back. This week on Thursday, that would be tomorrow. Sorry, it's been a long week. We are doing a workshop for City Council. So we did a workshop last spring on, I think it was May 1st-ish. We're doing a workshop tomorrow. Following up from that workshop in May on the Southeast Development Area, I would encourage you all to watch both of those workshops because they provide a lot of information. So the public notice will be published on Sunday in the newspaper, and we are scheduled to have a hearing on Southeast Development Area Specific Plan on your next meeting.
Awesome.
Awesome. That's it.
Thank you. All right, it's currently 8:17. Meeting's adjourned. Have a wonderful evening.